Good morning and welcome to the Retired Living Truth Series. My name's Brett Janelle and I'm your host again today. And today's topic is the truth about going from we to me. So it's great to see so many people here. As you probably guessed, today's topic is not the easiest topic to talk about. So Annette and I were a little worried that probably no one would show up today. But I'm so glad you did. Because the whole seminar series and the reason we do this is so we can all be better prepared, better informed to make good decisions and that we can help each other. And so today's topic, for those who wish to participate, I think will be valuable. For those who just want to listen, that's great. And for those who are in denial, that's okay too. Yeah. I need a little clicker here. So just some housekeeping. For those who are new, the way we're going to do this today is going to be a little bit different, or I should say for those who attend regularly. So instead of doing an hour of presentation followed by question and answers, we're going to be really daring and actually try to take questions as we go along. And this could be a total disaster. And if it looks like it's going to be a disaster, we'll ask you to hold questions, and then we'll take questions at roughly 11 o'clock. You should all have a handout, and we've tried to put in as much detail as we possibly can so you don't have to take copious notes. But there will be some places that you'll want to make some notes or circle things, asterisk things as we go along. So as we go through the presentation, if you do have questions, raise your hand and I'll have the mic runners come to you. But I'd ask you to please keep your questions related to what's in the handout. So if you have stories or things to share, please hold that for later. Otherwise, we're just not going to get through the material. Are we all in agreement, willing to do that? Yeah, so just questions that are specific to what we're talking about. No extra add-on stories and so forth. That would be great. What else? Housekeeping.
Oh, phones.
Oh, phones. Thank you. Yes. So can we silence phones? If you have a cell phone and it is still on, could you either put it in vibrate mode or please turn it off? So I think we'll take it.
Stand up here.
So introductions. So today you are super lucky. You have the two best presenters here in Reno. Just kidding. But I got a laugh. So Annette and I are your presenters for today on this topic. And Annette, you want to do an introduction for us?
Yes.
And why we're the presenters?
Yes, absolutely. So we have actually done this topic before in the past, a couple times, but it didn't really hit home until last year. On November 3rd, my dad passed away, and it was sudden and unexpected. But through that process of helping my mom over this past year, we have learned a lot. And we thought we would take what we have learned and pass it on to you so that it'll help you for your future and for your loved ones after you're gone. So it has been, and I have to say, my dad was a very detailed planner. And there are still things that he did wonderfully, and there's things that were missed. And things that we didn't even know we needed to know about. So we're going to convey this knowledge to you and hope you enjoy it. And you can either take it or just say, yeah, I'll just let somebody else deal with it.
And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Depends how much you love your loved ones. So let's just talk about what it means to go from we to me. Because we had people calling or commenting like, well, I don't need to go because I don't have a partner, I don't have a spouse, it's just me, so this doesn't apply. And that's not correct. So when we talk about going from we to me, the typical situation is partners, spouse, a significant other, passes, so we're a we, and then one of us leaves Earth and becomes, then there's a me. So that's the typical, but let's think about what else is we to me. If I have a parent or parents and they pass, am I not now a me? I've lost the we, my family, I'm now the me. And I'm the one who has to pick up things, in a loss of a mother or a father. Similarly, if I have a sibling and I lose them, if Annette was my sister, we're a we, and if it's just me left, I'm now a me, and I'm probably going to have to look after, things from her estate. So there's lots of examples of going from, we to me. So the more we can prepare in advance, the more it's going to help us with our loved ones who are left behind to carry on whatever our wishes were. And that's kind of what today is about. How can we better prepare for what's inevitable, that at some point, we're all going to pass, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially since during that time, it is emotionally crushing, and it's good to have a roadmap what's going to happen next, or what you should be looking at next, because knowing that you're going to be in not the best state of mind at the moment.
Yeah, and as anyone who's lost a loved one, it's an exhausting process going through trying to pick up the pieces for yourself emotionally, and then just all of the logistical kind of things that need to happen. And there's a lot of frustration too. If things haven't been well prepared, if there was no will, trust, and now you're dealing with probate, or you're trying to find out where bank accounts were or passwords, it can be really frustrating. Equally frustrating if you're dealing with the DMV or any government agency, the amount of time you spend on the phone and they don't understand what you're asking, and multiple phone calls, when you're emotionally distraught, and now you got that frustration. That's no fun for anybody. So last month we had Rich Schultz here and Lou from the Trust Company, Trust Alliance, and we had Ashley, and we talked about the importance, or they did, about having trust, will, healthcare directives, and so forth. And we polled the audience, and most people have that in place or in the process of having that all in place, which is absolutely fantastic. But is that sufficient, is my question. Just show of hands, is that enough? Once you've got your binder with all of those papers in it, is that enough? Does anyone think it's enough? No hands? Well, oh. Well, why do we go to all that trouble then? If that's not enough. So why is that not enough? Just call out. What's missing? I've got my nice, beautiful binder. It's got all the paperwork in there for everything that, I wish to have happen. Just yell it out. Passwords. Yeah, we're missing passwords. What else? It could be out of date. Let's assume we have a trust that's just been done last week, and our will and our powers of attorney, our healthcare directive, everything's totally up to date. I know a lot of you went to a workshop that Rich Schultz did after the last seminar, and he's helping some people through that. So let's just assume everything's in place. What else would be missing? If Annette passed and I have to deal with everything, what might be missing? Yeah. Oh, banks. Yes, bank accounts. Where to find your trust? There's a binder somewhere. Yeah, exactly, Linda. Yeah. Maybe I don't know where Annette's binder is. I'm now going to go searching. What else could be missing? Ongoing bills. Yeah. What's going to keep getting paid automatically out of Annette's account that I might know about? So it could be a year gone by and things are still being paid, whether it's Nevada Energy, or that's probably not a good example, but
we've actually had that happen where subscriptions, and they don't know that it's still being paid, and it just comes out of the bank account. Yeah.
And try getting money back from an organization who's been receiving the recurring payment. Good luck. So I think you get the idea. So
yeah, the most important thing is to really talk to your family members and let them know what your wishes are. My dad, actually, he was very vocal about his feelings and how he wanted things to happen. And fortunately, he did talk to the family and was very vocal about it, because he didn't fill anything out. The sheet of paper that said what his wishes were for his remains and all of that was totally blank. So, but unfortunately, because he was so vocal and the family all gets along, it was no issue at all. But that is not always the case. So it is really good, even if you're vocal, to make sure you fill everything out about what you want to have happen after you are gone.
So who has a binder, whatever color it might be? If it was a Rich Schultz Law Group binder, it's probably green like this. That's what mine looks like. But who has a binder that has all of their documents in it? Yeah, so a good number of people. Who has 100% confidence that they've gone through and completed every page? Just a couple of people, way less hands. Yeah, so it's completed. You signed your trust documents and your will and your healthcare directive. Your attorney went through and made sure you signed those. But there was a whole lot of other pages there to help family members that may not be completed. So go back and look at those, because that's what Annette was talking about. We pulled out the page of what Annette's dad wanted to have happen, and yep, totally blank. So we made sure ours was filled in. I think it was prior to that. And actually, it makes me laugh what Annette put on hers.
So I had filled mine out previous to my dad passing away, and I had put on there that I didn't want it to be a sad moment. I want people to celebrate. Well, after my dad passed away, I realized nobody's going to feel like celebrating. I mean, I wanted a band to be hired. So I immediately erased all of that from mine because I'm like, there is no way that I'm going to put that on somebody else to feel that they need to do that.
I think I hinted, do you really want me to have to go and work out to hire a band and a venue to have this party? Yeah. So make sure it's, kind of realistic too, in terms of your wishes. Yeah. So you should have a handout. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. We wanted to try to put some things together from our research and our personal experiences and the help of our attorney and various other people that would help you, if you so choose, to set things up more optimally. But just before we jump into that, you may not have to do anything because I found this slide that apparently you can just take it all with you. So there seems to be this service, you can just load it all into the back of the U-Haul and take it to the cemetery and you don't have to worry, you just take it with you. But if you can't do that, then these are the things that we need to talk about. So in your handout on page number 2, on the second page, we have a checklist of being prepared now while we're still a we. So some of these are applicable to everybody. Some are where you have a spouse. So they'll it'll depend on that situation, but most are applicable to everybody. Hopefully these are all self-explanatory and you're welcome to ask us questions as we go along if it doesn't make sense, but we're going to talk about a number of these, but just not all of them. So either as we go along, if there's one that you really want to know about, just put your hand up. And if you want to wait till Q&A time, we can cover it then as well. So the ones that we really want to talk about, and this is for this is for a married couple, is credit cards. Does anyone know what happens to once you pass away? Once we pass away, a hearse comes and picks us up, the coroner, and part of that process is getting information about the deceased, and one of those items is a social security number, and guess what they're required to do upon our death? They need to report it to the Department of Social Security that you have passed. That causes notifications then to go out to other service providers like financial institutions. So financial institutions will get notified of my passing based on my social security number, and some of those institutions will immediately go and cancel my credit card. No big deal, I'm dead, I don't need my credit card, other than maybe those reoccurring payments, but if they stop, maybe not a big deal. What happens to the spouse who has a card that has Annette's name on it, but she's actually a card holder of my card? I'm the one who applied for the credit card. She has a card that says her name, but it's actually not her card, it's actually mine. What do you think happens to that card? It's cancelled as well. So if that was the only card Annette had, what ability does she have now to pay anything that needs to be paid by a credit card? She doesn't. If she didn't have a credit history for whatever reason, do you think she will be able to get a credit card? Might be tough. And even if she did have great credit history, which I think you do.
Yeah, I do.
You do. It's still going to take time, isn't it? They don't turn up tomorrow. And when you're grieving for the loss of a loved one, that's probably not the first thing on your mind to go and get a credit card so you can keep paying things. So if you're a couple, just make sure, I would recommend, if you have a credit card, make sure it's actually you own the credit card, not your spouse. Does that make sense?
So you each have a credit card that's under your name. You can still share and have the add-on, but make sure you at least have one credit card in your name.
And the reason this was important when Annette's dad passed away, Annette's mom had an add-on card. It said her name, but Don was the card holder. It immediately got cancelled within just a couple of days. All of those bills now couldn't be paid. And we had to go and try to work out which bills, and her mum didn't have her own credit card, so we couldn't put them in her name. So we had to deal with that. How do we pay these bills?
But hold on.
Actually, one sec. Can I introduce my mic runners? Can you jump up here, please? Lisa and Gina. Actually, Gina, come up here and just introduce yourself very quickly, who you are, who you represent.
I'm Gina Gary with Nevada Silver, representing Medicare plans, and I will bring him the mic.
Perfect. And while you're doing that, Lisa. Hold that in for a second. Mine works. I just probably turned it off for you, did I?
Oh, there we go.
So I will learn how to turn on a mic. The first thing. My name's Lisa Fleck. I am a mortgage advisor with Neo Home Loans, and I specialize in helping people with reverse mortgages or HECMs, which is what they're technically called.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa will take this half. John,
Hey.
quick question.
Brent, when your father-in-law died, Don, the social security number, but who canceled? Don't you have to, doesn't somebody have to call and cancel that card?
No, upon your death, Social Security notified banks that subscribe to the service and their bank just cuts it off.
And I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That includes being able to log in and a whole range of things that we'll talk about. Yeah.
So you want to have a clear understanding of your income. So it's good to sit down with your partner and talk about what your income will be when one of you passes. Because sometimes you'll have a certain income now, and then once you pass away, that income goes away, or it may be transferred to your spouse. So you need to know if your income is going to change so that you can make plans moving forward.
And you would think we would all know that just naturally, but how many people have we come across where it's a big shock? Suddenly they're no longer getting the pension because it was going to the spouse and it's done.
It really plays into this next one where we have had people where they have had to sell their house because they can no longer afford to stay in their home. And how crushing is that to not only have to mourn your spouse, but now have to move because you cannot afford your home. And there are ways around it. So if you know that your income is going to decrease when you're single versus being a couple, you can get a reverse mortgage as a possibility, because then that will not, you won't have to worry about the payments once your spouse passes away. We have a couple right now that's the situation. If he passes away, she will not be able to afford the house. The only option would be for her to sell the house, or they need to do a reverse mortgage before he passes away, because afterwards she wouldn't qualify for a reverse mortgage on her own. So it's really good to take a look at that. You need to know what your income is and what you're going to be able to afford, so you don't have this shock after the fact.
And Lisa does reverse mortgages wherever Lisa was. So if they have questions or in that situation, yeah, just reach out to Lisa. So our idea of this checklist is, so, you know, when you leave here today and over the next weeks, months, just being able to go down and just check off that you've covered each one, or cross it out if you so choose to. So digital assets. So some of us are old school and we keep hard copies of everything. Some of us don't like to have any paper and we scan everything. So depending on where you lie, this may or may not apply. Thank you. Apply to you. So if you have photos, it's like we keep all of our photos digitally. If the other person doesn't know where they are or how to access them, there goes all of the family, photos, including your mum and dad, and all the photos that we've had. So just think about the things that you might have digital. Documents, if you scan documents and have those, how does the other person access those? Annette's dad was very good at keeping records of things. We didn't know whether he had them saved on the computer or not. We didn't even know if he had an account on the computer that he and his mum shared. And Annette's mum didn't even know if he had an account. So just trying to work out, well, where are the documents? I know Don's printed out and given me things. Is there more that we should know about? So just, yeah, making others aware, whether it's, spouse, children, siblings, just where things are that they should know about, including that green binder. And when it comes to those, also passwords, and we'll talk more about that though. It's one thing to say it's on my computer, but well, how do I get into your computer? And we'll come back to that.
Is it Facebook and things like that? Because that falls into that as well. If you have a Facebook account,
Speak up.
if you have a Facebook account or any account that you go into that after you pass away, you don't want to open, it's good to have your family members know what your password is so that they can go in and cancel that account for you.
And I think Rich spoke about it as well, making sure in your will and your documents that you're giving someone legal authority if you don't want Facebook to continue on, or any of those accounts to have the right to delete those accounts in the event that no one can log into the account and do that for you to delete it. Another one is just to think about what you do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis. What should your partner know or your children know, in terms of things. It could be things around the house that need to be done. It could be bills that need to be paid. It could be that life insurance policy. Just what are the things that you do? Start thinking about those so you can pass that information on to your spouse in this case, or someone else who's going to take over. And then the last one, home operations. So this happens a lot when we see a spouse pass away. We're helping them, with a real estate transaction, and they're trying to work out things around the house. How do I winterize? My spouse did that. How do I, reset the water sprinklers? How do I adjust the thermostat? Lots of things around a house that maybe only one of the couple know how to do. So being able to share that information, either by showing or documenting in some way, how to find those things. Like at Annette's mum and dad's, I was over there trying to shut the water off, to winterize the house, or actually turn it back on, I guess it was. It's like, where is it? It's hidden under a bush over by the mailbox, and it took me ages to find it. But
We ended
just
up
simple.
having to get a gardener to come out and help, or knowing where it went.
Sprinklers, which
Sprinkler system.
lines and so forth. Yeah, so just being able to, if you can, document those things. And Annette's dad did great though in where the irrigation box was. He labeled, which one, which zone each thing was, and yeah.
The other thing is we had a couple where the husband had passed away, and then he was the one that did everything, or the grounds, everything. And he was very meticulous and documented everything. He took pictures, had diagrams to show where everything was, what it was. He had a whole manual. It was amazing. I've never seen anything so detailed before. And when she sold the house, she was able to pass that on to the new homeowners, who happened to be first-time home buyers, who were absolutely over the moon to have a manual for the house of exactly how everything operated. So it is a great thing to do for your loved ones, and then to be able to pass on.
But don't overthink this. It's fine. Like, okay, Annette, if I die, Annette, you're just gonna have to deal with it. And don't we, when we lose someone, we do deal with it one way or another.
Yeah.
It's just whether you want to make it easier than harder. So, yeah.
You should swap places.
So on the handout on page, where does that start? Page 3, we've found with others that having an inventory of everything really helps. So we want to kind of just walk through this. You're welcome to use this form. We'll make it available for download. You can type up your own version of it. Rich might even provide you with one. I don't quite recall. But the idea of this is to be able to have, along with your binder, just a record of everything that someone else who's going to be helping out should know. So we just want to step through this. If you have questions again about any of it, just let us know. So an inventory as of a certain date. So I did this as of today. So all of this information is as of today. Hopefully in a year's time, I would go back and review it quickly, maybe on January the 1st each year, and just make sure it's still all correct, that nothing has changed. And if nothing has changed, just cross out the date, put in the new date. And that way the person who's acting then on your behalf knows, okay, as of 6 months ago, this was all correct. And if it's 9 years ago, okay, well, maybe it's not so correct. So just having the date there helps. Also, if things don't apply, just writing in the word none so people aren't guessing. Whoever's acting on your behalf later isn't trying to guess the information. So for example, a funeral fund. So this is one we see often to hear about, is someone's prepaid for their funeral along with their wishes, but no one else knows that it's been prepaid. So guess what happens? During the time of grief, you're not looking to find out whether it's been prepaid. You're calling your local provider, and you're paying out a lot of money for a burial or a cremation and so forth, only to later discover that was already prepaid. Kind of too late. The money's gone. The funeral home's not going to reimburse you or do anything. That was a wasted policy. So if something like that is already prepaid, just noting that, where to find it, who it's with, etc. And then down the bottom, just putting in who I should reach out to on, say, behalf of Annette. Who's the CPA? Maybe Annette takes care of all our finances. She meets with the CPA. I don't even know who it is. So having it on here, I know who to reach out to for prior tax returns, to help with the next tax filing and so forth. Once we're deceased, do we have to worry about taxes? Yeah. Well, no, we don't. We don't have to worry about anything. But someone else does on our behalf. I had to help her mum, do a tax return for her dad because it was still in the current year, and then a final one has to be done. So there's those things. So having all of this information in one place really kind of helps with that process. So putting down who the CPA is, who the attorney is. If you use Rich Schultz, write in Rich Schultz. So then, whoever's looking at it knows who to reach out to, who has, that trust binder, a copy of it, who potentially is going to help. I'll be there one second. Financial advisor, insurance. So who's the property insurance with? I had to go digging to help her mum to work out, well, who's insured the house, the car, when are those policies coming due? So just having that all set just makes that a whole lot easier and less stressful trying to work things out.
And similar to the binders that we have for the Retired Living Truth seminar series, where we have the business cards in the front, you could put a sleeve like that in the front of your trust with just the business cards for the people that you trust and that you've been using. So your loved ones have an easy reference. So you don't necessarily need to write it all out, just have it in one place so they know where to get it.
Yeah, and if you have a sleeve and you need a business card for a realtor, we'll happily give you a card to add to that.
Yeah, that's out.
Got to slip that in. We had a question over here.
I don't have a question. I just want to point out that when you go from we to me, the me person is filing taxes as a single person, not a married couple. Makes a big difference.
It certainly does. And again, having this information, because depending on when the person passes, you're actually still filing as a couple for that last tax return. So Annette's dad passed away in November. So the 22 tax return was still done as a couple. The next one is going to be done as single. And as Joe points out, then there's tax ramifications in terms of what tax bracket you're going to be in and a whole lot of things with IRAs and all sorts of fun stuff. So, thank you, Joe. Property. So the next section on the form is property. So I guess it's obvious if we're a couple, which house we hopefully, we live in. I should know where I live. But if we have other properties, if maybe we have a rental property or something, just having those listed down, because maybe one spouse deals with it, the other one doesn't know the exact address of that other rental property. That does happen.
But this also helps as far as how title is held. I met with a lady recently. Her husband passed away several years ago. They own multiple properties. They're all in another state. And all the other properties were community property with right of survivorship. What didn't happen was this property here in Nevada was community property and it did not have with right of survivorship. So she has to go through.
Explain what that means for those who
So
don't.
if without right of survivorship, that means she has to go through probate on his half of the property in order to sell it. If it had right of survivorship, that would not be an issue. It'd go right to her. So she didn't even know that that was the case. If she and her husband had gone through and written out exactly how title was held, then they would both know what it was. And if you don't know how your title is held, you can just call us up. We can look it up for you and let you know how it's held.
Can we get a mic over here, Lisa? So most important, looking at how your property is held. If it's not in your trust, and I would just encourage everyone to verify, because you went and saw your attorney. If you have a great attorney like Rich Schultz, he'll make sure that it actually went into your trust. But mistakes happen. Maybe someone forgot to file the paperwork and it didn't end up in the trust. So if the property is not in the name of the trust, even though you have a trust, it's not going to help you. It's still going to go through probate. So just checking, and probably on your tax bill, when you receive your tax bill, it should show there. It should come to you in the name of your trust if it's in a trust. If it just says, Brett Janelle, I can probably guess it's not in my trust. Or if you go onto the county tax assessor's site, you can pull up your property and look there to see what it says. And failing that, call us and we'll look it up for you.
Danielle has a question.
My question is in regard to the trust. If your property is in a trust and everything is literally taken care of because of what's in the trust, am I correct on that?
You'll avoid probate,
Yes.
Okay. And past ownership and all that will go
to whoever you said.
with this trust instructions.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes. So this is more if you don't have your property in a trust, or maybe your rentals aren't in the trust and you didn't realize. So just going back and looking at any real property that you have and just making sure it's titled correctly.
And we have another
Because it was
question.
very, very frustrating for that client of ours. She thinks she's putting the home on the market and selling, only to find out she thought she owned it, only to find out that's not the case. So You don't need that when you're dealing with, grief and so forth.
Maybe a finance person could answer this. Is it a good idea to put your house in your children's name, or is that a bad idea? I don't know. I don't know. I think it's a good question.
It's a great question. Were you here last month at all? Were you here last month
Yes.
for a seminar? I'm not sure if we covered. Yeah, we did talk about it. Yeah, so that would be a no. And that would be a no. A lot of ramifications of things that could potentially go wrong. Do we want to go into that, or maybe talk to Rich? If it's in your children's name, the short of it, one of the exposures is something happens to them, they get sued. Well, your house is now at risk as well, would be one simple example. They're in a car accident, didn't have enough insurance, and now they're going after anything that's in your child's name, and that includes your house. Yeah. So just not a good idea. There's other better ways to handle that if you want your children to have it. And there's also potential tax implications as well. Yeah. Automobiles, we see this one often when someone passes. No one can find the title documents to the car, the motorcycle, the RV, or whatever it might be. Annette?
And if there isn't a title, then whoever is left with it, we're going to have to sell it for less, because the buyer is going to have to go through the DMV to get title, or you're going to have to go through that process. And it is a lengthy process. It's not real simple, but there is a process for it. We had a lady that her husband was very much into motorcycles, and a whole garage full of motorcycles, no titles for any of them. So had to sell them for very cheap. People got some really good, and some of the motorcycles were just given away. And that could have all been avoided if there was at least titles for them.
And not that there weren't titles, we're guessing there were, we just don't know where to find them to be able to sign it over to the next person. And our client didn't want to, who likes going to the DMV and going through that whole process? Yeah, she didn't want to deal with it. Like, my peace of mind and dealing with grief is more important than trying to sort out these motorcycles. But had we known where the titles were, if she'd known when the titles were, then it'd be really easy. As part of the estate sale, it's like just sign over the, the different vehicles to whoever was buying it, and then the buyer's happy because they've got, now they're the owner of it. Yeah. The question.
Carolyn has a question.
Oh, yeah.
I had a question about an automobile.
A little closer, Carol.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a question about the automobile. One of the automobiles is only in my husband's name. He forgot to put my name on it. Can I have the written material, the title? What can I do with that? Can I sell it all right? Or do I have to contact our dear DMV to get them to?
I take it you've lost your husband?
Yes, my husband's, yeah.
Yeah, it's a call to the DMV. And depending on what was in his will, if it was expressed, would reach out to the DMV. They should be able to help you with that.
Okay.
Yeah. So just on that of titling, just to avoid that, and you can do this as long as, both partners are alive, is go to the DMV, have that amended to add the other spouse onto the title. And we recommend always doing it with an or instead of an and. Instead of Brett and Annette on any of our vehicles, it's Brett or Annette. So that means if something happens to me, I'm in hospital and incapacitated or whatever, and Annette needs to sell the car.
Brett,
doesn't need both
Yeah.
signatures.
if he's still alive, have him sign off the back of
No,
the
he's not
title.
alive.
He's not alive?
Deceased,
Okay, it's
yeah.
too late.
Too late, yeah.
Sorry.
DMV. But that's why we suggest always doing or, because that means either spouse can sell the vehicle without needing the other one. If you have and, then Annette and I both have to sign the document. If one of us is unavailable, then it's DMV again.
Okay, Brent.
What about if putting the cars in your trust?
Question is putting your cars in the trust. They did talk about that last month, and that was not the optimal way to go from what I understood, correct, Rich? Typically, we don't put cars in the trust. Rich? Yeah, we don't want to put cars in the trust, correct? So our attorney says, no, don't put cars in the trust. Why do we not want to, can you run a mic, Lisa, just over to Rich? Why do we not want to put cars in the trust, Rich? This is Rich Schultz, attorney at law, one of our education partners.
Mainly because your insurance company treats the trust as a business, and you're going to be paying $600 more every 6 months at least for auto insurance. And DMV is miserable, but it's not $600 a month every 6 months for the rest of your life miserable.
Thank you, Rich. A couple more questions over the side.
On that subject, what about motorhomes and RVs? Should
Um,
they be in the trust?
Motorhomes, RVs, same thing applies, not in the trust. Unless extenuating
okay.
circumstances or high value.
Wait, Rich has something to say about it.
It's the value. So if you have a really nice trailer RV, you want it in the trust because DMV is going to look at it and force you to probate. If it's a normal one, like I don't even know the class numbers, but the ones that look like a van or something or a smaller one, don't worry about it.
If there's that beautiful those $1 million RVs I see on the road, you want to leave it to me, I'd be totally okay with that. I'd love one of those. Yeah. Another question down here.
If you already have a title that says and you want to change it to or, do both parties need to go to DMV or just one party can go to DMV?
I think you'd have to ask DMV. My guess is they're probably going to need both because it says and, which means both people have to sign. So I would think it would need both of you. You may be able to get the form in advance from them and, have your spouse sign it. You'd have to ask DMV. Good question.
How soon do I have to file for probate after the death of the spouse or vice versa?
Rich, how soon do I need to file for probate after the death of my spouse? Is there a time restriction?
There really isn't a time restriction. What you're going to run into is trying to manage an asset that your spouse owned, and then you're stuck. So if there's something, and typically like the house, if you have to sell a house that needs to go through probate, you discover on the way to closing the house. And so now you push the close out 6, 7, 8 months. So it's better to do it as soon as you know there's something that needs to be probated, start there.
Thank you, Rich. I'm so glad you're here today, Rich. Oh, very good question.
Yeah.
That's why we thought we'd do questions as we go along rather than trying to hold them all. Hopefully that's more helpful this way. Did we cover title? Yeah, title.
We have one more.
One more? Yeah.
Can I go back to DMV?
Yeah.
For the title,
As
if,
long as I don't have to come with you today.
no, no, I'm not going. They have a form for the title owner to put a beneficiary on your vehicle. It's not called that, but it's $29 and you can put like a payable on death to another person. So that's kind of an easy way.
Yep, right. Thank you for sharing that. Next section of this handout, bank accounts. So why would it be important to list out all of our bank accounts? Know where the money is. I like it. Yeah. Because sometimes, one spouse takes care of all the finances, that person passes away, and the other spouse has no idea where things are. They just haven't been involved in it. So just having an inventory, and whether it's a spouse or it's an adult child or a sibling that's going to be helping, just knowing where everything is makes a huge difference. And along with that, who holds each of those accounts? So it's one thing to have an account number and it's at Bank of America, but whose name is the account in? Is it Annette and Brett, or is it just Brett, or is it just Annette? So that you can be clear about what happens when one of us passes in terms of who has access to that account. Because we've definitely had plenty of clients who have been surprised and they now have no access to that money, and they've got to go through a process to even have money to be able to live because it was all in someone else's name, and the bank isn't going to help them out unless there's appropriate documents in place to overcome that. So, and then who are the beneficiaries of that account? So it's one thing to be in Annette and Brett's name, but if something happened to both of us, then who's the beneficiary? Is it our trust? Is it a named person? So just going through every account, you may have to go back to your bank and find out, how is this account held and who's the beneficiary of the account? Is that what you want?
Yeah, we've had an instance where it was a second marriage, and the husband ended up passing away, but he hadn't updated his accounts. So the money actually went to the first wife and not to her. So it is really important to look at this, update it.
Maybe he liked his first wife more than his current wife. I don't know. Good thing he was dead. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Ken.
A serious question. What is the protocol on safe deposit boxes? I kick off. Do they lock the box and how does that work?
I don't know. Rich, do you know
should
safe
know.
deposit boxes? If it's just in Annette's name and I try to go in and get it?
It's like your own bag.
Just keep my card with you. It'll take care of everything. No, safe deposit boxes are miserable because you have to get a court order to open them. You inventory it, you go back to court and report what's there. Then you go back and you probate what's there. The way you avoid that is either name a beneficiary. If you have a trust, have the trust be the owner.
Thank you.
Say that again, Rich. I'm not sure I understand.
Hi, Roger. Yeah. If you have a safe deposit box, always name a co-owner or a beneficiary. You don't have to let them know they're on there just when you die, or put it in your trust if you have a trust. If you don't, your heirs will have a headache. Melissa will be miserable because she has to do all the paperwork. And everybody will wonder why we're jumping through hoops.
And on that, if you have a safety deposit box, make sure it's on your inventory of things, because no one's going to be calling when you pass going, you know, we have a safety deposit box, you know, if your spouse or your child or sibling, whatever it might be. So put that on the list.
And don't keep your trust and powers of attorney in your safe deposit box.
I'm sure that has happened. So Rich said, do not keep your powers of attorney, healthcare directives, trust in the safety deposit box. Why would that be so important? Imagine if Annette's healthcare directive, you know, end of life decisions and so forth was in the safety deposit box and something happened to her and it's Friday night, she's just been in an automobile accident and she whispers to me, it's all in the safety deposit box in her name only. How am I going to get to it? How's anyone going to be able to do what she wants? So yeah, Thank you, Rich, for pointing that out. Know where the key is? The key, yeah. But I think the bank are going to check. They're just not letting you randomly walk into a safety deposit box. It's like, who are you? Yeah. Joe.
What about going to get the death certificate for the spouse that dies, who dies? I had a debt I had to collect from someone. I'd made a loan to him, and the only way I could get the money back after he died was to show a death certificate from the county, I think it is.
Okay, we'll cover that in a moment. Yeah, we'll get to that. Death certificates. Let's keep going on. Stocks and bonds was the last one there. Let's go back. So if you have any other financial instruments, stocks, bonds, treasury bonds, anything like that, bonds, I should say, have those listed out. And more importantly, then, you know, how to access those things. So like Annette's dad, he had some treasury bonds. They were in his name only. Luckily, he had a scrap of paper and I was able to find that to know, because I remember one of the seminars, we talked about the great rates you could get on treasury bonds. So I went and told my father-in-law and he went and bought the, you know, the $10,000 that you can get per year. So I knew he had them because I told him to get some because they were paying like 9.7% or something. But so I knew about them, but then I couldn't find any paperwork. And then buried away in a file was a sheet and it had, you know, all the details. So thankfully we're able to get into that and sell it without having to go through the whole process of proving death and so on. But one interesting thing there, when you go online, we're used to having a username and password for those who do things online. Well, the Treasury Department, that's not enough. They want to know the answers to those 3 questions that you chose. What was your pet's name? What was the first street you lived on? What's
your favorite color?
What's your favorite color? I had no idea what a dad's favorite color was. No, really, I didn't know what a dad's favorite color was. Nor did I didn't know the answers to any. What was his first car? I think was one. I got no idea what her dad's first. Do you know what your dad's first car was? No idea. Thankfully, I found a little piece of paper though that had those all written down on it. So I just point that out. If there are those extra questions, make sure that's in there, not just the password, because it may not be enough. Which brings me, maybe we have a slide on it. Who does use electronic banking, electronic services? Yeah, if you notice that they're trying to make it more and more secure now, they have what they call second order authentication, where they want to send you a text message and then you have to enter that code into the app. or you have to use your fingerprint, or some now it's voice recognition. So just think about those. If I was to pass away, does Annette have everything she needs to be able to get into that account?
Like access to his cell phone.
Does she have access to my cell phone? Can she get into my cell phone to get that text message that was sent to my cell phone in order to get into the bank account? So just think about that. Is there a PIN number on my phone that she can use versus, my thumbprint? Because if I only have thumbprint enabled, or I have a PIN and she doesn't know what it is, she can't get into my phone to do anything. Yeah, so just think about those. Yeah, so stocks and bonds. What do we have written at the bottom? Yeah. Life insurance policies. Does everyone know what policies exist? Another one we see, and I'm sure you see a lot, Rich. Policies that were just unknown. So maybe there was a policy upon death. Maybe it was a term life policy. Unless someone knows about them, they're not going to be collected on. And the insurance companies love that. They love it when no one collects on their policies. But that doesn't help you or your loved ones. Retirement plans is another big one. Annette's dad had some different retirement plans. Thankfully, her mum knew about them. But just, knowing what IRAs and pensions and various things so that you can follow up on those. Yeah, and again, on those, who is the beneficiary? Like Annette talked about, having the wrong beneficiary and the ex-wife, getting everything, or going to someone else who's now deceased because you haven't kept up on who the beneficiaries are.
We had one where the husband had put cousins on as his beneficiary, but then they were estranged cousins and he hadn't looked at it in over 20 years. And so when he passed away, the wife got the phone call from the cousins asking where their money is. I mean, people come out of the woodwork, even ones that are estranged, if they know that there's money at the end of it. So, and she didn't even know that that was the case. So again, really looking at this and knowing who the beneficiaries are.
So a great exercise for husband and wives to do over a nice glass of wine. It's like, what else do we have? What don't I know about?
We have a question, Brett, in the back.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, one of our good friends died of COVID, and he had some Bitcoins, and his wife never knew the password, so they're gone.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so just having everything down so things aren't missed, and yeah. Does anyone use automatic billing? Yeah, have our bills just paid automatically, like probably half the room? So that can present some challenges too. If we pass, who knows about those bills that are on auto pay? Who's going to stop them? Or who's going to transfer them to the new credit card because they were in the partner's, spouse's name? So just having an inventory of all the different automatic payments you have, just to make it easier for the person taking over to know what they're dealing with. So for example, I have a Wells Fargo checking account, and that pays the Wells Fargo Visa. So I have that as a recurring payment. That might be helpful to the next person. And it's in my name, Peter Smith. So it's not in joint names, it's just in my name. And maybe the email. So what happens? How many of you just get everything sent to you electronically instead of paper in terms of like statements? Yeah, a number, yeah, good number. Yeah, so when you pass, nothing's arriving in the mail for the next person to know, okay, there was this bill and so forth. So that's why it's important to like, what's the email address for me to get into that account in order to be able to see what the statements were. And then we'll talk about the passwords.
You definitely need to know the computer password to get into the computer to check the email address too.
Yeah, and thankfully Annette's dad, he had that all written down. So I was able to log into her dad's account and just track and see all the bills that were coming up that we had no idea about. So it's just helpful to have that list of what are the bills. And more importantly, perhaps being able to get into that email account where those notifications are coming to. So yeah, Wells Fargo checking pays the Bank of America Visa that's in Mary's name. The Wells Fargo Visa pays for Spectrum Internet and so on. So, how does your waste management automatically get paid? Nevada Energy, City of Reno Sparks, Truckee Meadows Water, just listing those all down and what account is it coming out of.
Yeah, because my mom got a notification. Was it water? They were turning off the water or the
Yep. Energy, energy.
Yeah.
'Cause it was in their dad's name. It was on a dad's credit card, which automatically got cancelled upon his death. And suddenly, yeah, there was a notice saying we're shutting off your water because I have to post that at the property. She's asking me, why is my power getting shut off? It's like, well, let me go back and look. Well, that was in Don's name, not yours. And that's the other one, just knowing, because then you need to go through, like the mum had to then go and notify each of these entities to change the name. So NV Energy out of, Don's name into her mum's name and so forth. So yet another process. So just having the information and knowing whose name things are in just makes it so much easier. Just trying to reduce the frustration during a really tough time.
Oh, Brett, we have another question.
Is the surviving spouse responsible for the credit card balances that are in the husband's name?
I think it depends, doesn't it, Rich? Can we get a mic over to Rich?
Yes, so it depends.
Something to do with what state we reside in?
Yeah.
Or is that for medical?
It's for well, generally medical bills, credit card bills are owed by the person whose name it's in. The difficulty is going to be proving you never used the card and benefited from it. Medical bills are easy. There he is. He's dead. He's in the hospital bed. That's easy. Credit card, it's got a $10,000 balance on it, and proving that you never used it and never benefited from it is almost impossible.
So if it was paying NV Energy, then I'm benefiting it from it. Even
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if it's got NV Energy bills on it, you're gonna have a hard time not paying it.
Thank you. Is that a bit of a surprise? I heard a lot of people go, "Ooh." Right.
Oh, Brett, we have another
Yes,
question.
another question? Oh, over here.
Our bank accounts are in our joint. And our credit card is with the same company and we get the same, it's all on the same balance sheet, statement at the end of the month. Is that credit card, and we also use it for most of our payments. Would that credit card be canceled upon one of our deaths or the?
So that's a great question. So do you know who applied for the credit card originally?
Probably myself, yes.
And then did you add your lovely wife on as an additional card holder?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you pass and Social Security gets notified and they in turn automatically notify the banks through the system that they use, they're going to cancel that card, and both cards now no longer work because your wife's card wasn't her card really, it was your card with her name on it. So those bills now won't get paid. What I found interesting with Annette's dad was it depended on the financial institutions. Because they had accounts at various different banks. Some were on it like that within 3 days, everything was shut down. The other ones, it took them a couple of weeks before they shut it down. So it just kind of depends on how good their systems are.
What about the rest of the accounts other than the credit card?
No, your other ones are in joint names. Those are fine. That will go on as normal. But the credit card's the one to watch out for.
Is there any way to have us both a joint credit card? Is there anything such as that?
They don't really exist anymore from my understanding because I looked into that. Yeah, you would need to have one in each of your names. You don't have to use the other credit card. You could leave it there dormant, just use it once a year so they don't deactivate it. But I just recommend having one in each name. Yeah, and it's fine to keep using yours as an additional card holder if you're collecting points, rewards or whatever, but just have that other one on standby.
I know the credit card we use for auto pay is a joint. In other words, we applied jointly. We put both of our incomes on there. That was maybe 20 years ago or so.
Yeah.
Is that okay then?
I don't know. I know they used to be joint accounts going way back when for credit cards, but from everything I look, that's pretty much impossible to get now. But I just go back and verify that it truly is joint. Because I know we've applied for ones at the same time, the same card, but if you look closely at the second person in the second box is actually an additional card holder, but they're still asking for that person's income. Yeah, so just be sure. Some more questions over here.
Got it.
Lisa, thank you.
Yep.
Is this helpful? No?
Yeah.
No? Is anyone going to do anything with it? No.
So even though the credit card company, it may be in somebody else's name, but the credit card company then can say, they want to talk to the successor trustee to get the money from the estate, which is in reality basically the spouse, correct? That's what I experienced. So,
Rich, help us out here. Say that one more time. This is related to a credit card?
pardon me?
Is this related to a credit card?
Yes.
I don't understand the question. We need another mic. Maybe we should just give one to Rich
Yeah.
permanently.
Credit cards are always issued, in furtherance of what Brett was saying. Credit cards now, modern credit cards, if they've renewed, so you may have applied 20 years ago jointly, but it's renewed since then. You have a date that expires in 5 years. That card is issued in one spouse's name. You may not know which spouse. If you apply jointly, it could be in your wife's name or the husband's name. They're never issued in a trustee's name. And same with utility bills. Somebody just asked me about the utility bills. Utility is always in one individual name. It's required under their franchise agreements. So it's either husband or wife. It's not going to be in a trust name. That's water, power, telephone, if anybody has a hard line anymore. Actually, the big one that nobody asked about, cell phones, are always issued in one spouse name. So you may have a joint account, but I promise you, unless you've added your spouse as an authorized owner after the fact, gone online and filled out the forms, when the owner of the credit card of the self account dies, if I were to die, I've got all my wife's in the business and everything's in my name, that account goes away. They lose the numbers. So I had to add people as a I forgot what the word is. They're not an owner, they're an authorized something or other. But I was at AT&T, I asked them how to make sure this doesn't end, and they'll tell you how to do it. Does that answer through the question?
The situation, Rich, was that credit card company is called to ask to speak to the trustee of the estate in order to collect the debt, not the spouse, but the spouse is the trustee. So
yeah, on the collection side, I mean, if they're calling collect a debt, it means it's in the dead person's name. And if there's a large debt, I would make them jump through the right hoops to make the claim. Because they're credit card companies, they already made their money. They don't make the money on the interest, they make money on the fees they charge the vendor. But they will always ask for the representative of the estate, and typically they don't care who they talk to as long as they get paid. You just want to make sure that if there's a surviving spouse, the kids aren't sort of helping you out and using your checking account to pay a bill that's not yours.
Rich, why don't you just keep the microphone? Yes.
Are you charging me by the hour, Rich, and that knife?
It's by the 10th of the hour.
10th of the hour, yeah. Typical attorney billing, yeah. Thank you.
We have a question.
Another question?
So on that issue, maybe for Rich too, when you have a power of attorneys, mostly those go away the moment the person dies. But isn't there some type of a power of attorney when you can give them authorization, and isn't that done through the trust to handle all of those affairs?
It depends. No, I told Brett I had 3 answers today. Yes, no, and it depends.
Rich, why don't you come up to the front?
I'm glad I tucked my shirt in.
Yeah.
I think on that night I'll just go take a seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the power of attorney dies when you die. So that just goes away. Typically, most creditors, meaning somebody you owe money to, if you say, I'm the trustee, they're not going to care. They're going to tell you how much you owe as long as you pay them. If it's an asset, so it's an asset that's outside of the trust that had the dead person's name on it, whether it's community property asset without survivorship or an IRA with no beneficiary, they're going to require a court order to access that. The trust isn't going to be enough. And so that's the real importance of getting things into the trust, checking your beneficiary designations, all of that. And really important. I mean, I love the story about, they're married twice, which is super, super common nowadays. And they don't update their life insurance beneficiaries. They don't update I made a note to myself. I better go check. Actually, I'm 99% sure, but it's that 1% you got to check. But you need to go look at that, because we've got how many now, Melissa? Where'd you go? I think we're up to 3 annuities we found in that one estate. So we have husband and wife, both husband died, wife died a short time later. We have now found 3 separate annuities over the course of a year, one purely by luck because they got a statement in the mail. Nobody knew about it. Had $200,000+ in it, no beneficiary. Yeah, I mean, just update your beneficiary designations. If it's an individual name, make sure it's got a beneficiary or co-owner.
Thank you, Rich.
Right, thanks, Rich. I just stayed. Might as well stay here.
We're almost there. Almost at the end of your homework.
Oh.
So usernames and passwords. So most important, maybe equally important as everything else. So how do other people, whoever's taking over, access the different accounts? So we would highly recommend, as you, for the next 12 months almost, every time you log into something, if you're doing it electronically, writing down who it is you're logging into, Bank of America, what the URL is for Bank of America to make my job easier. If it passes, I know where to go. I'm not trying to work out, well, where's this Bank of America? The username, so peter@gmail.com, and then what the password is. And just making sure anytime you change the password, you come back and update, obviously, this document. Otherwise, it's not going to be of any use. And doing that for every single thing that you log into, along with any notes. So like when I die, Annette, please log in and delete my Facebook account or delete my Instagram account or whatever it might be. What else? So this will help you if you're doing it via paper. And Annette's daddy did a pretty good job of having a list via paper, and that was just totally invaluable. You can also do it electronically with a password manager. So there's software you can purchase very inexpensively, LastPass, Bitwarden, where you can store securely all your passwords, and it makes it really easy when you log into a system for it to pull up the password and the username, and it'll automatically update the password if you allow it to. But more importantly, if you are using that, how someone else gets into it. It's great having this secure place to store your passwords, but if no one knows how to get into it, it's of no use. So like on ours, it has the password to my computer and the password to my secure wallet. So if something happens to me, the next person can actually get into it. So just kind of think through that process, because the password to my Bitwarden, if that's what I'm using to manage it, is great, but useless if Annette can't get into my phone or my computer to access it. That makes sense? So just kind of think through, how would the other person get into it to access it? And we kind of also talked about if there is that second form of authentication. Did I write it down here? I didn't. Just where it's going to text you or it's going to pop up in an application. Like I use Chase. So there'll be times on Chase Bank when I go in, it wants to actually, when I log in online, it'll sometimes want me to actually open up the app on my phone before it'll let me get in online. So just kind of thinking through those things. Okay, and it needs to be able to get into my phone and get into that application. And more we're seeing this. Like our Vanguard account now uses voice recognition. So what do we do if, as far as voice, what's the workaround? So again, as Rich said, making sure you got the correct beneficiaries, and is there another way that we can access that account? You'll find on a lot of those things, you can add a second person, a second authorized person, as Rich said. And please, on your cell phones, call your cell phone company and make sure you do have a second authorized person, because we use our cell phones for so much of accessing.
Nancy has a question.
Nancy.
Oh, it's not on.
Lisa's going to help you.
No, is it on mute?
I'd like to just mention something about which we were talking earlier. When my mother died, and she was a widow at the time, I was handling her estate with my brother, and everything was going along fine. And then both of us got a letter from a company that told us that they had discovered an asset of hers that we were not aware of. And they volunteered, for pay, of course, and 50% of the asset, to find it and reveal it to us. And of course, we couldn't know the size of the asset. Well, thanks to my sister-in-law, who refused to go that route, she did some very extensive research, and she came up with an asset that turned out to be a very healthy stock. But this is the importance of listing everything that you had. And I think she had made the purchase of that asset probably in her later years when her memory was failing and probably forgot to record it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So write everything down. So on page 5 of your handout, we've included a list there that might be helpful if you find yourself in this situation, loss of a loved one. Just the first actions from our experience and a little bit of research that we would suggest. So I would suggest you just take the time to read through those. We're not going to cover them now in detail. We'll cover a couple. Joe, you asked about death certificates, I think. Yeah, recommend 6 death certificates, originals from the county. Whoever you're working with at that time, the police, hospice, the people involved, they're going to ask you that. Do you want death certificates? How many? And then they'll get mailed to you. You'll pay the fee and they'll get mailed to you. Just on death certificates, I've read somewhere you need like 15, 20, something crazy. Most places will just take happy with a photocopy, or you sending in a scanned copy.
Or they'll take the original and then they give that back to you.
A copy of it. Yeah, there's not that many places that actually keep the original. So don't think you have to go and pay a huge amount of money for all these original death certificates. Anything you want to add, Rich?
Yeah, you need less than you think.
So 6 is probably a really good starting. So the things we did want to cover on that is going back to money, credit cards. So does anyone accumulate like cash rewards points, travel points on their credit card? A few people here. What do you think happens when they know that the owner of the credit card is deceased? What do you think happens to all those? Poof, gone. Yep, gone. So if you had like $1,000 in cash points there, they're gone. So one of the very first things I would suggest if you're in that situation, making sure your spouse, whoever, child, whoever's taking over knows about that. Yes, this account has money attached to it, or frequent flyer points or whatever it might be, to redeem them at that time. So we immediately went into Annette's dad's accounts, and he had a good amount there accumulated. So we ended up, I think one was through Wells Fargo, ordering a heap of Amazon gift cards and having them delivered. So within 4 or 5 days, the gift cards had arrived and the account was cleaned out as far as claiming those rewards. And then the account was shut down by the bank. Yeah, so just getting those out.
Can I make a quick comment about that? We were trading in some travel points at one point, and they were using cash rewards. And the gal on the other end of the phone said, if you have a large amount, maybe twice a year, you should convert them into money and have them send you the check. So it doesn't, and then I just put the check away into a separate account for vacation. But I never let the cash reward get too high.
That's great advice. Yeah, so one option is don't let it get high. Yeah, but you might just find, there's 6 months there. It could easily be perhaps $1,000 it's accumulated, $3,000, whatever the amount. If you don't act on it quickly, it's going to vanish. It's going to disappear. Similarly, like we have points for travel. Annette knows that if I drop dead, she needs to log into my Chase account and transfer them out of my Chase account into her account. So all of those, and go on a cruise.
Yes.
Yeah. And rent a band and celebrate my death. Yeah.
We have a question in the back.
Question, where are we? Yes.
Upon death, what triggers notification? Is it the obituary column, or, the banks in 4 or 5 days, they know. So what triggers that?
From my understanding, the coroner who's going to put down your cause of death is required to notify the Department of Social Security that you are deceased, and then their system notifies whoever, financial institutions for one, that you're deceased. Yeah. I don't know the time frame. This happened really quick. It was within days the account was gone. But as I mentioned, then another institution, it took them several weeks. So it depends on how much, I guess, each institution is on it once they get notified what their process is.
We have another question at the front, but we'll have to wait till the mic's there.
Mike,
No.
One moment.
Who notifies the life insurance?
I don't think anyone does unless it's your family or whoever. Yeah, they're happy not to pay out. They're not going to come and say, "Yeah, is that person still alive? We need to pay the money." Yeah, correct, Rich?
Yeah, one of the big things is let people know you have life insurance, or if you name a charity, Lewis.
Oh, we just died.
Oops.
Oh, no,
Oh, there we go. Like Lou said, yeah, that was a clue to stand up. Like Lou said last week, if you name a charity as a beneficiary of your life insurance IRA, let them know so they can make a claim, because nobody's going to tell them.
Thanks. Microphone down here, Gina. Do you have a question? Yeah.
Well, hold on one second. Let's get you a mic.
If we could just keep it to questions too at the moment, just looking at the clock, or we're all going to be here at 1 o'clock and you have to buy us lunch.
Under first actions upon death of loved one, number 2, take direction from police. What does that mean?
Usually when there's a death, one of the places to call would be the police department, or you might be calling, you're probably going to call 911. But from our experience, and Rich can probably add more, they're going to send the police out no matter what to determine the cause of death. Yeah, that you didn't knock your hubby off or something, drug him, or whatever the case may be.
That's what
I'm
happened
quite
with
serious.
us,
That's what
because it was a sudden and unexpected death. So we called the ambulance, the paramedics, they came, but the police come as well to make sure that and then they had an investigator come to make sure that we did not kill him. Yeah.
It was bizarre. It was
Yeah.
like, this is now an evidence crime
Yeah, you
scene,
couldn't go in the
basically. You had to be back from it while they did their investigation and made sure there wasn't anything suspicious going on. Not fun when you're dealing with grief, and but it's part of their process.
But they do have, they have volunteers that come as well that will talk to the family. So they had a volunteer that came in and talked to us and just offered us all these services. And we just took everything because we were in grief. So we didn't know what to ask or anything. They just provided it and gave us the phone number.
Yeah, and I would recommend just saying yes to anything they're offering, because you're dealing with grief. Just to say yes, yeah, I'll take that service. Don't be too proud to say no, I don't need help, because they have lots of resources. Whether it's grief counseling, what happens, what's the process, cremation or burial, where to go, because they're going to ask you, well, where do you want the body sent? So those people are there as a resource to help. So just say yes to whatever's being offered. Yeah, and then you can always decide as you go along what you do or don't need. So that was a good question. So finding yourself as a me. So if you end up in that situation where it's a me, Annette had a couple of suggestions.
I did.
Well, we came up with suggestions. I thought you were going to talk about these cognitive capacity.
Oh, yes. When you have a loved one that passes away, everything slows down. You're not going to be thinking straight, because you know how your brain just works when something happens and it's unexpected and you're so caught up in that, how is this possible? And then people are talking to you. You're just not, everything slows down. Do not make any decisions during this time. That's why we're saying, if people are offering services, just say yes and put it aside for later so you can really process it, because it is not the best time right in that moment. And then family and friends, there are people that can come out of the woodwork and ask you for things. Just take your time, and you can blame it on your attorney or blame it on a third party, just saying, I was told to not make any decisions for the next 6 months or the next year, whatever it is, and give yourself time to really process and figure out what is the most important for you, what is going to help you. And don't put into that pressure, because that can be a lot of pressure for people to come to you.
Lots of examples. The neighbor comes, can I have all of his woodworking equipment? Can I have her, whatever? They're trying to, maybe helpful, maybe they're not being helpful, who knows? But yeah, just say no to all of that. Yeah, I'm not making any decisions. Let me get back to you.
Unless you've made the decision ahead of time. Because if you know that your loved one is going to pass and you may have already made decisions ahead of time, then go ahead with those plans. But if you haven't, give yourself grace and let yourself just really process it. I mean, that's one thing I really learned through my mother, is she was beating herself up. She goes, I'm not thinking straight, and I'm not answering things right. That is perfectly normal in that situation. Just know that it's normal. Give yourself grace and don't go for the pressure of beating yourself up or allowing somebody else to push you to do something you don't want to do. And then the home. Oh, do we have a question?
We'll come back. Let's just knock these out.
Okay.
Because of time, and then we'll grab that question.
So the home, unless you have made the decision before your loved one has passed that you do want to move, I would recommend that you take the time to not make any major life decisions until the time has passed. And the rule of thumb is wait a year. Wait a year to make any of those decisions. I have been called where my husband passed away last weekend. I would like to talk to you about selling the house. But those are typically people that have already planned ahead of time and know that that's something that they want to do. And the hardest call is the one where I can't afford my home anymore because my husband passed or my wife passed. So I don't have that income and I have to sell the house. That is a very sad call. So I prefer not to have those. So if you plan that ahead of time, figure out what your income is, or what your plan is that you are planning on making a move, that you plan that ahead of time. Otherwise, wait and to give yourself time and figure out what you really want to do.
I'd almost encourage any couples to have that discussion. So if one of us passes, what is the plan? Staying in the house, moving somewhere else? Because while you're a team, there's two of you, you can work that through that together and kind of hopefully make some decisions either way, versus one person having to try to work on it later. Yeah.
And then this last one, property value. It is good to either hire an appraiser or ask your real estate agent. We do this for free for our clients. They would just call us up. We just need to know the date that your loved one passed, and then we can run the value of your home as of that date. The reason why that is important is for tax purposes. So your accountant is going to want to know that. And it's helpful when you do eventually sell your home. So you'll want to keep that in the file for later.
Question down here.
Hi, I was on the steering committee for the community foundation that put together a very extensive booklet of about 45 pages on losing someone in the family, a death in the family, spousal problems, scammers, big scammers that come around. And this booklet is free. It's available through the Better Business Bureau. Tim Johnson will be just giving out these books soon. They're about to be launched. But the steering committee and we were on this committee for a year. We put together a lot of stories and a lot of valuable information, especially right after the sudden death of a relative or a spouse. You don't want to make decisions quickly. You want to think. You want to involve your family with your finances. I lost $20,000 in a romance scam myself, and I'm in the book.
Well, thank you. We'll make sure we provide that resource. We've had Tim here on the panel before, and we'll make sure we get that out to everybody. On your front page, there's some books and resources if you want to do further reading. The AARP article, I guess I didn't even write AARP, but what to do when a loved one dies, practical steps you'll need to take in the early days. That had a really good checklist in it there as well. We borrowed some of the items and added them to our list, but that's also a good resource. So before we jump to questions, because we're running out of time, and hopefully we've answered most, just some upcoming events. So Joy, you here, Joy? Can you come and join me? Let me grab Joy. So next Thursday at our office, Joy is hosting a workshop. Did we need the flyer or you're good?
Oh yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, okay. 30 seconds. Tell us what the workshop is.
All righty. I'm Joy from Mountain Lakes Estates, and I will be hosting debunking the myth of a forever home, really deciding whether or not a forever home is manageable. If you're holding on to a home, a property, a lifestyle that might not be ready for your stage of life, your health needs, or what you really want fulfilling retirement to look like for you. We are looking forward to having you guys come by and really look into the different next steps, options, alternatives, and how we can help kind of understand what life looks like in different stages.
Right. Thank you, Joy. And what's the cost to attend?
Zero.
Zero? So you should all have a workshop flyer with more details about it. For anyone who's new, finding our office location can be challenging. We have a nice big training room there. Use the directions on the handout.
It is not going to be here.
Not here.
It's going to be at our office. So definitely keep that piece of paper and follow the instructions. Keep them out.
At 10:30. So if you'd like to attend that, please mark on the yellow evaluation form that you would like to attend the workshop, so we can make sure we have handouts and so forth. Next month, we have the truth about squeezing more out of life as we age to 100. So everything we covered today, we don't need for a whole long time because we're all going to live to 100 plus. So, yeah. And I'm excited about this. So a person very dear to Annette and I, our mentor who's helped us work with retirees. She's been instrumental in what we've done with you guys the last 6 or 7 years. She's actually going to be here from Oklahoma. She's a doctor in gerontology, and she's going to be on our panel, as is Dr. Susan Harris from the Sanford Center of Aging School of Medicine, UNR, will also be on our panel. So I think it will be fantastic. So if you'd like to join us next month, again, just on the evaluation form. We have a lot to cover here today. We are working on our events for next year, our seminar series for next year, what it's going to look like, the topics and everything. And we would like some help. We would like to have a focus group of maybe 8 to 10 regular attendees join us so we can brainstorm about what the program will look like for next year. We definitely have some changes that we're going to make. And that'll be on Friday, September the 8th, between 10:30 and 12:30 thereabouts at our office. If you're willing to help us, please just mark on the form and we'll reach out to you. If you're willing to give up an hour or two of your time, we'll probably provide some lunch and so forth, just to brainstorm and work out how to make this better for everybody, topics, a little bit about venue and so forth. So we'll follow up and reach out. If you'd be interested in helping us, just check that box. And we'll call everybody, but we only need 8 to 10. So if everybody ticks the box, don't be offended that we didn't choose you. We only have 8 to 10 people that we need. Your turn, Annette, while I get a glass of.
So we have Portraits in the Park. We do have spaces still available. One of the things Brett and I have done is we have hired a professional photographer to take your photos. We know how important it is to have family pictures. And we've noticed, like with my mother, she wanted a family photo with my dad in it. And my brother-in-law was the one taking the picture, so he wasn't in the picture. And so we photoshopped him in. I know I talked about this later, but unfortunately the Photoshop, he's 5'10", my mother's 5 feet. They made him the same height as my mother. He looks like a Siamese twin with her.
Looks ridiculous. We should have brought the photo. Yeah.
It looks very ridiculous. So we thought, what a great opportunity for us to hire a professional photographer so you won't have that issue. You can have a picture with your whole family, whoever's important, your friends, your pets, whoever.
Just a portrait of yourself.
Or just
with
yourself.
a pet, whatever you like.
Whatever's important to you. We do have slots available. We are doing it on September 17th from 10 to 2. You would just pick a PM.
So
we still have that on. Yeah, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
We have specific time slots, so you can't just turn up. Unfortunately, we'll have to turn you away. But if you'd like to participate, see Alexa, and she has the sheet, and we'll follow up and get you slotted in. And last but not least, I think, who's been on one of our community discovery tours, our bus tour of different communities? Right. Oh, I thought there'd be a whole lot more, a number, but excellent. So for those who haven't, on Thursday, October the 19th, 3 communities are going to participate: 5-star Premier Residence, Mountain Lakes Estates, and Somerset Senior Living. We're going to have 3 buses out the front here. We'll meet here. You'll hop on a bus, and the buses are going to go to each different community, and they'll provide snacks and lunch, and you'll get to experience what each of those communities are about in a non-pressure, non-sales environment with your peers. So if you're interested in learning about our different communities, independent living, assisted living, memory care in the case of Somerset that provides all 3, participate. I have a short little video.
Is that residents or prospective residents get to see the different communities, how they differ from each other, how they're the same, how to compare what they really want in a retirement community. We're so glad that you're here today. Real quick, we're just going to today will work. First thing is we're going to do a quick movie. Then we're going to head over to the fireside. We'll have lunch and answer questions, and then we will also do a tour of this building and the campus.
There's Annette. There's me.
Considering keep our large home, this isn't that expensive. It's comparable to what we would be spending on upkeep in our own.
There for seniors in possession. And not only for obviously the seniors, but also for spouses and their families understand what's available because they have their seniors and to get into the next phase.
The model of it. You get to see what type of furniture you should be bringing in and how much it fits. It has been a wonderful experience. I've been, I've taught, retirement homes and like nursing homes, but everybody's in a wheelchair, everybody, you know, not communicating, not participating in any activities and, you know, just kind of ready to die. But these places are, everybody's so active, interactive, and achieve so much. I very much enjoyed the tour. They broke it up with information, snacks, lunch, ice cream. The retirement communities are something that the past or like a nursing home. So a lot of people are very surprised pleasantly when they come to communities to see what amenities offer and how much it can feel like home. I look forward to seeing other facilities. So I think it's a good choice.
Yeah, so that kind of gives you a bit of a flavor of what the day looks like. For those who have been before, was it a fun day? Yeah, lots of fun. So whether you plan on never moving or maybe sometime in the future, it's just a great opportunity to see what's available locally without any pressure of sales because you'll be in a group. And yeah, it's a fun day. I'd encourage everybody to participate if you haven't before. Microphone. If you wish to attend, yeah, just mark on the yellow evaluation form down the bottom, community discovery tour, and then we'll reach back out.
And I want to be really clear, everything that we offer is free. So we're not there, you're not paying for any of these.
You said we could download that inventory form, but I couldn't find where that is on the thing.
You're way ahead of it.
Oh.
Hopefully within a week, we'll have the video up of today's recording and the paperwork.
Oh,
Yeah.
so just go to your website.
Website and under past events. Yeah, then you'll find it there. Yeah. But give us about a week. Yeah. Oh, our drawing. Most important, Gina. I think we're going to get done almost by 11:30.
Yeah.
Almost.
Today we have this spa basket I showed last month. It has a gift certificate to Atlantis. It has the adult coloring for relaxation. It has candles, and of course it has the rainmaker, which I love. Very cool. All right, so
Gina, can you tell us what we had to do in order to have an opportunity to win this for those who weren't aware?
absolutely, you had to bring a guest. And I know there were one or two that said, I brought a guest. Where's my ticket? I'm winning that basket. So I'm excited.
So we do this each month. If you bring
Yes.
a new guest, then you're in the drawing to win that month's prize.
So it's you that gets the ticket, not your guest. Want to be clear.
Yes. All right. Who would like to pick it? Here we go. I saw everything. So, all right. And the winner is.
Is that me?
No, I don't think you brought a guest. I don't know. 359-844-6.
446. 446.
Oh,
no,
there
no.
we go.
No.
Right in the back? Oh, no?
No.
Who got it?
No, 446. Ticket last three digits, 446. Maybe they left.
Ooh. Yeah. Next.
Okay.
Okay.
Win.
No, are you sure? 446. Does anybody go out to the bathroom? No. No, darn it, I gotta take it home.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Is someone in the bathroom, you think?
I don't know.
Okay,
We're
too
going
bad.
to
All
the
right,
time.
tough
We're running out
crowd.
of time.
All right, and this
Last
winner
three.
is 444. Yay!
Hey. Thank you so much, Linda, for bringing a guest.
Thank
Ah.
you. There we go. There we
So
go.
next
Thank
month,
you.
Debbie Ward from Mason McDuffie will have a similar gift, approximately $200 in value if you bring along a new guest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. We really
Well,
appreciate
just before
you.
we do, we
Oh,
still have like 1 minute. So are there any last minute questions that we didn't cover?
got it.
One down the back.
I just have a comment. I know you guys have been denigrating the DMV, but I had a really good experience with them. We had one vehicle that was in an OR, but one vehicle was not. My husband, I did one that had the OR, he did one that had just him. The special circumstances were I had just re-registered it, but he also had veterans plates and I wanted to keep the same plates with the same number. So Gordon at the DMV spent an hour with me to go through all the separate processes to make that happen. So I had a very positive experience. I got there early. They got me in when I got there. It's actually running very smoothly now. So,
Fantastic.
so even though people like to put them down, I had a very positive experience there.
I've had
So
good experiences. It was Lou on our panel last month that hadn't had such a great experience, but yeah, no, DMV are great. So thank you for sharing that. So thank you everyone for being here today, and hopefully we'll see you next month.